Hi, Dawn the Stitching Coach here. Thanks for joining me for a Christmas cookie knit along, hosted by New England Yarn in Southington, Connecticut. We'll be using the pattern Christmas Cookies by Sarah Kellner of Rabbit Hole Knits. If you couldn't make it to the reveal party, visit New England Yarn's website to sign up and buy your ingredients to make these 5 adorable knit cookies. This is week 1 in a series of 5 videos, leading up to our knit along finale on October 29th, when we'll meet in person or virtually to decorate our cookies. In these tutorials, I'll give you tips I found helpful. Now pause here, grab a cup of hot chocolate or your favorite beverage, and gather your supplies. Now you have gathered your ingredients and you're ready. Let's get cooking. In this video, we'll start with the candy cane. I don't know about you, but provisional cast-ons are not my favorite, at least not until I discovered barber cords. I'll cast on using the barber cords, and then I'll show you my favorite method for casting on the candy cane. Then you can decide for yourself. But let's start with the cast on. I knit all the cookies with this yarn, and this is all that I had left. So you should have enough to knit all the cookies if you bought the kit from New England Yarn. Also in the kit are the Chai-Gu lace needles, and you can tell how they don't have any memory at all. So these are a great cord if you struggle with magic loop method or just using circular needles in general. In this video, we'll start with the candy cane on page 4. Make sure you have an app, a stitch counter, just because we're going to need to count our rows. So make sure you have that. And also, we're going to be using the barber cords for the provisional cast on demonstration, but I'm also going to show you my favorite way of casting on this candy cane. It's called Judy's Magic Cast On. So let's start with the barber cords first. So I'm going to take some scrap yarn, my shorter barber cords, and my needle. And I'm going to begin with a tail and then enough for at least 14 stitches. And then I'm going to start with a slip knot. And I'm going to insert the barber cord onto the slip knot. If you've done a provisional cast on before, this is all going to look pretty familiar. You're essentially going to replace the scrap yarn you would have used for a provisional cast on with the barber cord. When you're ready, what you're going to do is you pretend you have these stitches live on your needle. You're going to insert, there's a little hollow core. You're going to insert the needle onto, or into rather, the barber cord. And when you're ready, again, I would always recommend that you push the needle into the stitches rather than pull through, because you're, even though it feels pretty secure, if you pull hard enough, it will come off. So just make sure that you're pushing in to the stitches, not pulling through the stitches, just to avoid this slipping off in the middle of that process, which would not be fun. So you're going to put that slip knot first onto your barber cord. Make sure you don't split the stitch. And then we're going to provisionally cast on our stitches. So the pattern calls for 14 stitches. So just like a provisional cast on, if you're familiar with it, you're going to start with a yarn over. You're going to reach under the barber cord, pick up a stitch. You're going to do another yarn over, reach under the barber cord, pick up a stitch. You need to have 14 stitches, so make sure that you have the right number. Otherwise, when you go to graft the bottom of the candy cane, you're not going to have enough if you don't have 14 stitches. Again, You're going to do that alternating, doing a yarn over and then wrapping. So I just did the pickup. So I'm on a yarn over, pick up, yarn over, pick up. And make sure you have 14 total on your cord and on your needle. So then we're knitting this in the round. If you're using double pointed needles, you can also still use the Barber cords. It really doesn't matter. In this case, I'm using the circular needles. So I'm going to divide up my stitches so that I have 14 on the front and 14 on the back with that last stitch in the back needle. And then once you're set up, you're going to knit as normal. So now I'm going to show you the other way that you can cast on that avoids the provisional altogether. Judy's Magic Cast On. You can use this for socks and lots of other things. So for this, since it's like a long tail cast on, you're going to need to have, again, a tail, and then you're going to have enough for your 14 stitches. So I'm going to audition this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 stitches. So I'm lining this up just like I would if I had live stitches on my needle. They're consistent and even across. So now that's my 14 stitches. So I'm going to start with my tail in the back, my yarn in the front, and then I'm going to twist that so that I'm crossing the tail over like an X. Then I'm going to take my other needle and make it parallel. So this is my first stitch on the top. Your top finger is going to go to the bottom needle and your thumb is going to go, so it's going to go opposite. So top is for the bottom, bottom is for the top. So if I've already done this stitch, I'm now ready to do my next stitch. So I'm going to take my index finger, bring it to the front, wrap it over that bottom needle. So it's going between the two needles. Then I'm going to take my thumb, I'm going to go between the two needles and over the top needle. Again, index finger comes to the front, wraps under and over the bottom needle. So it's between the two needles. My thumb goes between and over. Under and between, between and over. Under and between, between and over. Until we have 7 on each needle. That's 9, 10. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 stitches. When I'm ready to start knitting my candy cane, remember this is going to be the bottom of the candy cane already together. This is going to be the inside of your candy cane. So you've got these little purl bumps that are going to be inside the candy cane, and your knit stitches, okay, are going to be the outside. So make sure that you keep track of that. Oops, did I miss a stitch? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 14. Okay, no. So now, if I need this to be the inside, these purl stitches, that means they need to be facing me. I'm going to pull my back needle out and around. And I like to take my yarn and give it a twist. So that's going to hold that last stitch in place. And make sure, triple check, that you're not knitting with the tail. That would be a really short knitting project. You're only knitting with that ball of yarn. Okay. And then I'm going to start knitting at like normal, except I don't want to split that stitch. So I redid that. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Making sure we do a stitch count at the beginning, just in case we dropped a stitch. Then just like normal with magic loop method, we're going to push that needle into those stitches, turn it around. Again, make sure we know the tail from the ball of yarn. Bring that back needle out and around. And then we're going to knit across those last 7. If you want to count now, you can do that. So 2, 4, 6, 7. So I have the right number. So I'm ready to go. At this point, make sure you have clicked, you've done round 1. And keep doing this until you get to round 24 and stop. Pause, and then we'll do our first set of short rows. So I'll meet you back here in just a moment when we're ready to do our short rows. Now you've picked your favorite cast on. This is how the Judy's Magic cast on will look. If you're using the Barber cords, you'll still have the Barber cords on your live stitches, and you'll graft those at the end. You've knit your 24 rows. We're now on row 25. In the pattern, you'll see we're going to begin our short rows. I'm going to just demonstrate a few of those just so you can get a look at what the short rows are all about. You'll notice that the short rows she picked are the wrap and turn. But if you go on to Ravelry, you'll notice that other knitters have used Japanese and German short rows as well. In my opinion, at the end of the day, it's ultimately up to you. What makes you more comfortable, more confident as a knitter, go with that. If wrap and turn frustrates you and you prefer German, great, go for it. But I'm going to demonstrate the wrap and turn in this video. So let's get started with that. You'll also notice that I left my tail. You can stuff this back down inside if you want, clip it off if you want at this point. I left it on because it kind of helped me remember to count my rows. But if you're using a stitch counter of some sort and you've got it hanging on, that will also help you know when you're ready. So I'm just going to stuff that in. Actually, I'm going to leave that there so you guys can see visually where the beginning of the round is. So make sure you're not knitting with it and make sure it's out of your way. So the first wrap and turn, we're going to knit to that. So I've knit my 3 stitches. I'm going to slip my next stitch. I'm going to take my yarn like a scarf and I'm going to put that around the neck of that stitch. And then I'm going to bring him back over to my left hand needle and complete putting the scarf around his neck. So you'll notice that it looks different. It looks like a purl bump in front. Now I'm going to knit. So again, we're going to be knitting short rows that are going to create this direction. It's going to create this little curve, almost like the heel of a sock. So I didn't knit that wrap. So I'm now knitting back the way I started. So I'm knitting 6 stitches. I'm knitting these 3 on the front, and then I'm going to turn it to the back. It's going to seem weird, and it's going to be like, wait, what are you asking me to do? But it really is a trust exercise. You could already see that it's leaning to the left. See how it's going to look like it's turning already. So I'm going to push my needle back in, rotate it to the back, bring that needle back out and around. Remember, don't knit with the tail. That would be a really short knitting project. I'm going to now, if you want, you can knit backwards, or if it's easier, you can purl that stitch. So I'm going to actually, I'll do it that way. That way it follows how the designer's talking about it. So I'm going to take my yarn and bring it around and purl the stitch. Okay. So I've now purled these 3 and these 3. It wants me to wrap and turn again. So again, I'm going to slip that stitch over, put a scarf around its neck, slip it back over, and it tells me I'm going to knit 3 stitches. So I'm going to turn it back around. So I'm looking at my knit side, bring the scarf around to the back, knit those 3 stitches. Okay. So again, you're already seeing that beginning of the curvature that's going to happen. I'll do one more wrap and turn. So again, now we're on round 26. Round 26, we're going to knit 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3. In the pattern, she says you can leave that. If that bothers you, the wrap that's there, you can knit it if you want. It really isn't going to matter the grand scheme of things, but if you don't want to see that, you can knit those together. Oops, I almost lost my stitch. You can knit those together so that that disappears behind there. Now, so we've knit 4. Now we're going to do our next wrap and turn. So again, we slip as if to purl, put the yarn around the left side of that stitch, put the stitch back on the left side, bring your yarn to the back. Now it tells us to purl 8. So you can turn it this way and purl across if you want. But if you know and can read your knitting and it's more comfortable to do it from this angle, you actually can knit backwards. So in other words, instead of knitting or instead of purling, I've got it on the knit side. I've got my needle going into the back and I'm pulling it through just like a purl stitch on the back side, but it's really looking like a knit stitch. So again, I'll show you. So again, if you're purling, my needle is still going in the same direction. I'm still wrapping it and pulling it to the correct direction, whether you're doing it like this or whether you're doing it like this. So that is purling 8. So we've done 4 here. You can just leave it and purl it if you want to purl it, or you can turn it so that you're looking at the right side of your work. Doesn't really matter as long as it makes sense to you. So if that just blew your mind and you don't want to do it that way, then you can do it this way and just make sure that you're purling on the correct side. So that's 1, so that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we do our next wrap and turn. And notice I didn't knit that wrap and turn from the last round. So I'll show you what that looks like when you don't knit it. So I'm going to wrap and turn again. So I'm going to slip as if to purl, put my yarn around the left side of that stitch, slip it back over. And again, if you want to turn your work, you can turn your work. And now I'm going to complete that round, which says knit 4. So I'm going to knit 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So on this side, you see I didn't complete knitting together the wrap and its stitch. So it left this little, almost looks like a little purl bump. On the other side, I did complete the stitch with its wrap, and it just looks like a knit stitch. If this looks better to you, just remember when you come back around to this side for the next round, 27, you're going to make sure that you knit, when you knit 5, you're going to knit 2 together, so to speak. You're going to knit that wrap and its stitch together before you do the next wrap and turn. If it doesn't matter to you, because we are going to be icing our cookies and you're not going to see this because you're putting some decoration, some icing on top of that, then you can leave it. It honestly isn't going to matter if you're going to be covering up anyway. I tend to like this because it looks cleaner and neater, but you do you. All right. So again, as you do those wrap and turns, it's going to continue to make this curve that you see here. And you're going to knit all the way until row 40. And when you do that, you can make sure your tails are buried inside. Make sure that you don't have any tails left over, and you'll bring your uniced cookie to our knitting party on October 29th. So I hope these were helpful. Rewatch them. Make sure you get your kit from New England Yarn, and hope you join us for the next video. See you next time. Bye.